This week on Crunchweek, we're talking about Twitter's IPO filing, a rumored Amazon phone, and the shutdown of Silk Road. Welcome to Crunchweek. I'm Anthony Ha.
I'm Greg Comperic.
And I'm Alex.
So the first thing we're going to talk about is Twitter's S1 filing for its IPO, which has been much anticipated. Alex, I mean, this is something you've been actually kind of waiting for quite some time, haven't you?
It's been a pretty long wait, but really, when you finally get to see the numbers, it's really exciting. I mean, this is a business we've been tracking for more than a half decade now, and we didn't know if it was a viable business, if it was profitable, how many employees. I mean, we didn't have any of this information. We had to guess and guess and guess and guess, and finally they're like, yeah, here's it all at one time. And you're like, oh, really? It's cool, then.
Right. I think the most interesting thing to me was just to see how quickly it's grown, because you say we've been tracking it for half a decade, but actually, I mean, at least as an advertising business, it really hasn't been a business until 2010.
Right.
And since then, it's just become something with revenue in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And I mean, what was the biggest surprise for you?
How much money it currently loses. For example, its first 6-month 2013 loss was greater than its entire calendar 2012 loss. So it's a company that's currently investing heavily in its business, and not one that's kind of on the ramp to profitability. And that makes some people nervous.
Right. I mean, I think it's interesting because this whole wave of internet companies, I think there's this idea, maybe it's just a misconception that I have, that when you go public, you've kind of gone past that initial stage and you're supposed to be sort of a little bit more mature and I think, but actually most of these companies are much earlier than that and are still in this stage where they're not necessarily, some of them are losing money and then some of them are, clearly still just kind of figuring things out.
You can lose money and go public. That's actually okay. But you can't do a Groupon date, which was go public with no financial controls and then publicly fall on your face. So as long as Twitter is as a corporation set and investors understand why it's losing money, that's okay. It's not ideal. Would it be better if it's making $1 billion a month? Yes. But if it's investing in a way that will allow it to grow more quickly later and setting the foundation for a global sales team, that's actually okay.
Right.
The weird thing is they have a lot of cash and short-term investments that they could use and keep on running without raising more capital, but they're going public now. And so you almost want to ask yourself, why now and why the rush?
Yeah, why now and why the rush?
Oh, well, I guess walk right into that one. I have a guess. That's all that I have. My guess is that there's a lot of pent-up investor pressure. People put, I think, $1.16 billion into Twitter throughout its life, and people want to see liquidity. And the only two options they had were a sale or an IPO. And frankly, no one's going to buy Twitter for like, what, $20 billion? I mean, come on.
Right.
So they only had one option.
And I don't think Twitter wants to sell either.
They really don't.
So
I think they like being independent. So it's time to go public, so off we go. So now the question is, how will investors respond? How will they price the IPO? And how will it perform when it kicks off?
Right. So, I think one of the other things that was interesting to me, and this could be one of those things that's really only interesting to the journalists, but was just the crazy anticipation around it and how, everyone knew it was about to hit and we're just constantly hitting refresh on the SEC site. And I'm curious, Greg, as somebody who doesn't, maybe follow this aspect of the tech business quite as closely, I mean, did everyone just seem insane to you yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. That's how it should be.
My favorite part is watching, a couple dozen stories about the Twitter IPO go up on all different sites, and everyone just battling, trying to figure out what image to associate with the story. Because you can't put the Twitter logo 100 times. You have to find another picture of a bird that's blue. So
here's a bit of TechCrunch back channel stuff for everyone that's watching. Literally, the S1 drops, everyone loses their shit. We start just freaking out trying to figure out what it says, what it means. And Catherine, our dedicated copy editor, posts in the back channel like, guys, stop using blue birds on your images. So that's what it's like working on our side of the table. Little anecdote for you.
Right, and I think I put up a post that didn't have an image initially because we're trying to just get content up, and then I put in a logo of the bluebird, and then Lena immediately posted a story with the logo of the bluebird. So then I was like, I don't know what to do, so I just did the reverse logo, which is the white bird on blue. I was like, that should do. I mean, there's gonna be so many, it's as long as they're not
who's
identical.
Who's going to the site and being like, oh my God, guys, there's too many bluebirds. I'm leaving. I'm done with TechCrunch. I'm never coming back.
Whoever said that, will hopefully leave us a comment to that effect.
They probably have several times.
So that was probably, I think, the thing that reporters went craziest about, but it's not actually I think the craziest piece of news this week, which I would say was probably the Silk Road shutdown, right?
Yeah, it involves a cryptocurrency, a hidden drug marketplace, and attempted murder. So really, I think that wins on the nutso scale.
And the Glen Park Library, from what I understand.
Right. Mike's girlfriend lives in Glen Park.
Okay.
That's a nice part of town.
So, I mean, can you tell us maybe a little, because it's so crazy that every time I hear it, I just smile.
So essentially, here's what went down. There was a service called Silk Road. which was a marketplace for things you can't usually buy at Walmart, you could say. And it only accepted this currency called Bitcoin, which is essentially it's a virtual currency. You can't hold it in your hands. And it's becoming quite popular among people who want to do transactions outside the realm of normal commerce. And Silk Road took Bitcoin. You could buy drugs on it. You could buy guns. It was a long time this black part of the internet that people enjoyed for certain things. It turns out the founder got a little over his head and tried to order some hits on people using Bitcoin, and there was extortion, and there was the federal government came in and lied to him, and it was insane. In the end, he's in jail. Silk Road's closed down and seized by the FBI, and Bitcoin took it, a punch to the face, and they lost one of their most important financial pillars. So it was almost sillier than life, and if you wrote down the story as a novel, everyone would be like, this is just ludicrous. There's no way this is reality. This is too far out there. And yet it happened this week. So that's where we ended up.
And so was Silk Road itself shut down because of its founders' actions, or because of what was happening on the site? The
attention that it attracted initially was because they were selling large quantities of drugs on it. And
right.
The government usually is opposed to that. Unless they're selling them, of course. That's a different story. But Iran-Contra joke, sorry. So that's how they kind of came on the radar. But then things went south pretty quickly. I mean, you can't order murder for Bitcoin and get away with it, or I hope not.
You shouldn't be able to.
It's a new acronym. It's MAS, Murder as a Service.
Right. I mean, because this was also just a site that I was I'd seen headlines about, but was not, hugely aware of. I mean, I think that's true of Bitcoin in general for me until a few months ago.
Sure.
I'm curious, have either of you guys been sort of aware of Silk Road before this, or following it very closely?
Just mentioned in Bitcoin stories.
I have friends that do drugs, so yes.
Okay.
I mean, just frankly, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think you also wrote a story. I think it was you about sort of what happened to sort of Bitcoin afterwards, right? And
right.
So can you tell us maybe just a little bit about what it was? What
yeah.
happened?
So essentially, people loved Bitcoin because it is so anonymous and so kind of away from the modern commerce system, and that's why it was so great to buy drugs with, because you can't trace it, or you basically can't trace it. And people would buy Bitcoin, go to Silk Road, buy drugs, and that was why they would buy into Bitcoin, why they would own and hold Bitcoin. You take away that marketplace, which did $1.2 billion in sales throughout its life. You take away a lot of the demand for Bitcoin, people's willingness to hold it, and so people sold. And so Bitcoin at one point fell, I think, 15% that day. It's recovered somewhat, but definitely it was a moment of destabilization for the currency.
Do you think that this is sort of just a temporary kind of sort of setback, or do you think this is actually something that's going to sort of undermine sort of future growth as well?
Bitcoin is definitely bigger than Silk Road was in terms of its importance on the internet. So I don't think it's going to be, it's not going to kill it. Is it a short-term destabilization? Absolutely. Is it a problem? Is it friction? Is it headwinds? Yes. But I think Bitcoin has enough momentum now to sustain sans the need for Silk Road to exist. That probably wasn't true 2 years ago or 1 year ago.
Okay, well, I guess we'll see what happens.
What about for Silk Road users? Or what about the users themselves? I know that they had this crazy Tumblr system where any transaction kind of went through a built-in laundering system where it's passed into different Bitcoin wallets to make it harder to follow back through the chain. Yeah. But does this have any implications for users in the short term?
Well, they can't buy drugs anymore. That's the biggest one. You mean
individual
will their addresses
getting
leaked? Will they get in trouble? Yeah. I don't think so. I haven't read anything that would indicate that any databases of scale have been leaked. And I think that most people were just buying, LSD for themselves. I mean, the government's not going to, I think, really track that person down, kick down their door, and throw them in jail.
Sure.
I mean, if you were trying to sell, a couple of keys at once, I mean, you may be in a little more trouble. But I think for the average recreational drug user, not much to worry about. It's an inconvenience, and I would be a little paranoid, obviously. But I don't think we're going to see a mass raid system set up following this issue.
That would be kind of amazing, though.
That would be. I will blog that. Happily.
Well, so I think the last thing we wanted to talk about today was a little bit less crazy, but maybe just as exciting for some people.
Still kind of crazy for me. I like gadgets. I think it's kind of cool.
So, which is this? I guess is rumor the right word for it? So there's an Amazon phone that's.
So yeah, it's definitely a rumor at this point. The rumor about Amazon making a phone just keeps coming back. This time they've supposedly got a low-end phone and a high-end phone. And the thing about the high-end phone this time is particularly crazy.
It's it's the cameras. That's at least what I've been hearing.
Yeah. So this with this one, and this is supposedly just an R&D project. It might not ever ship. We'll see. But it has not one, not two, not three, but 4 cameras on the front. There's also a camera on the back.
So 5 cameras total.
What?
5 cameras total,
what
4 on the front.
Do with 4 cameras?
Take 4 really awesome pictures of yourself. No, but
it's the evolution of the selfie.
There's a couple of rumors as to why they would do that.
Front, back.
Forstagram. Okay, we're done now.
And all the rumors seemed a little bit crazy to me, but one of them is that they might be able to do a 3D interface. So as you're holding it, Part of the problem with head tracking on a mobile phone is that the phone is also generally moving, so it's really hard to track someone's phone on something that's also moving. But with 4 cameras, that's a little bit easier. So you could have an interface that actually like kind of rotates based on the position of your eyes, which would be pretty cool, super gimmicky. It's something
Would it
that
be useful at all, though? I can't imagine a use case that I'm excited about that I would pay more money for a device to get with that camera setup.
I completely agree.
Okay.
You know, and I think that's part of it being an R&D project. Maybe they're seeing if they can build something useful with it.
I mean, I just want to point out, like, I was recently at Microsoft's campus in Redmond, and I was in one of their back labs with some crazy people, and they have some stuff back there that's just, like, I'm not allowed to talk about it, but like, awesome stuff that's never going to reach production. But if we leaked it, we'd be like, they're building this and that. I mean, is this just something they're working on for fun, or is this something you really just going to kind of hit production? That's the core question.
Or are they
for me.
just trolling us?
That would be an effective troll.
From the beginning, I've been kind of surprised. If something like this actually hits production, I'd be really surprised.
Okay.
Because with 4 cameras, that's 4 times the camera cost and the bill of materials for what is essentially neat, like
Yeah.
kind of cool. The other thing that it could do, theoretically, is it would be more capable of not doing like a full 3D scan, but say if you wanted to identify a product like a bottle of Tide, you could hold it up, and using the 4 different cameras, you got four different angles on that product, and it might be able to identify the shape, and from that, it can identify the object itself, and then link you into Amazon and be like, oh, that's a bottle of Tide.
I guess we'll wait until the phone is out, assuming it comes out, and argue about it some more then. But in the meantime, thanks for watching.